Heyo everybody, Haku here with my review for Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint, or just Omniscient Reader, the webtoon, Chapter 2? Yeah, I guess Chapter 2, the Protagonist. I'm used to calling, like for Tower of God, I'm used to calling these arcs and then the episodes chapters. But yeah, this is going to be episodes 7 through 12, so we've got 6 to talk about here for the protagonist, or the protagonist sort of section of the story. But yeah, if you haven't been here for the first review for Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint, I just took detailed notes on these 6 chapters, and I'm just gonna sit here, talk through them about the series to you all, just discuss things for a bit. So yeah, let's just start off. Starting off with episode 7, we sort of just get a rundown of our 5 survivors of the first scenario, with Lee Hyun Sung, Yu Sang Lee Gil Young, Han Myung-oh, and Kim Dokja. So Dokja, I like that we get. There's so many series where, and I mentioned this like in the reaction and everything, where the main character would do something that's like, yeah, they succeeded, but yeah, some bad things also happened, and we just skim over it as like, yeah, the main character's the good guy. But in this story, we actually have to sort of have Dokja think about, yeah, I let people die that I could have saved. So we actually have it as a morally gray thing where Dokja himself is acknowledging, I do feel guilty about it, but also one thing again, I mentioned that I love about this series, I mentioned in the reaction, and I hope that it's something that carries on throughout the series, is Dokja's like, yes, I feel guilty, but it doesn't feel like real life. It feels like I'm just reading a novel. All these people were characters to me before today. And I like that. I hope we get more into that with this dissociation, or just getting into Dokja's psychology, where, yeah, before now, these weren't people to him. They were just fictional characters. This was just a story. So with something as traumatic and crazy as this survival game going on, how is he going to just be how is he going to retain his humanity without dissociating and like not seeing people as people anymore, but rather as characters? So I love that moral question. I love that Dokja has to deal with all of that, and that the series actually confronting it. I also love the shot during all of this when like there's blood on the window, but Dokja tries to wipe it off his face because he thinks it's on him, but it's just a reflection. I think that shot was really good. We get sort of specified that he killed 1 grasshopper and 123 eggs, and a lot of this sort of technical information I noted down just because I don't know how much of it'll be important in the future, but I think that writing it down, talking about this sort of technical stuff, like people's stats and abilities and everything, I think it will help me sort of immerse myself in the series more, and also, again, it might be important to know. It might be important to remember, so it's good to note. They were non-resistant organisms, so the coins are halved. He has 6,200, but only, 3,500 after deducting what he spent on improving his SSAM, his stats. Then he gets the achievement Decimator. He gets 300 coins for clearing the scenario and 100 deducted for the channel usage fee. Then they finally see the outside of the train car, outside of the subway, I guess, where they were. And we see the ichthyosaurs everywhere. They're grade 7 monsters. They're these big Seadramon looking guys. I think ichthyosaurs, I don't remember them super well from school, but I always thought they looked like dolphins. But the ichthyosaurs within this the fictional monster scenario here, they're like giant sea serpents, basically. So yeah, let me find where I was. Dokja says that there are 21 constellations watching, and you can tell how many are watching by looking at the stars. And I also really like that we have Dokja here, who has read TWSA before, to explain to us, because if he's just like, there are 21 constellations watching, we have no metric to know whether that is like a lot, a good thing. We don't know if that's not many at all, but he says that 21 is a lot for like a newbie Dokubi stream. So we actually get some information there from Dokja with that. So the constellations, yeah, they explain they're the ones who watch the Dokubi's live stream. There are 2 constellations that are pissed about Kim Na-moon dying, and there was also an unexpected scenario inspection. So again, I don't know if that's just going to be a one-off mentioned thing that the Dokubi had to deal with, or if that's going to be something that is brought back up to be important in the future. Again, maybe the constellations or whoever's in charge of this survival game or whatever, whoever's in charge of this apocalypse is potentially suspicious, because if they're like basically gods, then they would maybe notice that Dokja has interfered with things and changed this timeline, because there have to be like multiple timelines, right? Essentially, if regressors are a thing, because there's the timeline where the regressor didn't make it, didn't succeed, died, whatever, and had to regress back to the beginning. So there have to be at least 2 other timelines, where I guess at least 2 that we know of, where Yoo Jun-hyuk failed, where Dokja wasn't there or died, but in this one, Dokja is here and alive and conscious and succeeding. This is the at least 3rd timeline that we're watching. So again, if the constellations are like gods, do they know about any of that? So again, there are just so many, and I mentioned it reacting and everything, there are just so many different aspects to the series where it's like, okay, you could have a survival game, but then we're throwing in the sort of meta narrative of Dokja having already read the story into the survival game, but then we're adding another just huge monkey wrench into all of that by having regressors be a thing, and that's just an extra layer of complexity to this world, to this story that's going on currently. So yeah, weird. Don't know if that's going to be important. Don't know if anyone is suspicious of Dokja already beyond what he can know. We get a 500 coin super chat. I didn't mark down like every single super chat that he got, but just because, like, I don't know how important marking down every single one's going to be, and there were a lot. But Dokja actually says, this is important here, because when it happens, Dokja says that the constellations are going to pay for this with their lives. So it kind of gets me thinking, like, he knows more than we do. He's read TWSA. If they turn out to all be like really evil, or I mean, like, some are definitely going to be evil, some are apparently good, but apparently the entire system's so bad that he wants to take down the constellations, maybe. Either way, Dokja has a bone to pick with him. He doesn't like the constellations. And I guess, like, thinking about it more, because of taking these notes, because of just running through all this, it makes me think, like, I guess all of the constellations are kind of bad, even though some of them are, like, quote-unquote good. Even they are going along with this survival game, this apocalypse that's killing a lot of innocent people. Again, there's probably some sort of necessity for it that we don't know yet, but they are just going along with this whole system, so I guess the constellations are all bad, at least in a way. I love the Dokubi so much. All of Young's facial expressions, the personality, it's so good. I love the Dokubi, and even like future Dokubi, because I recorded the last like read through before recording this review. I really like all of the Dokubi. They're so good, and Young's probably my favorite character in the series so far. So yeah, another thing I love, we kind of get into the moral quandary stuff again, where Dokja's like, I'm a hypocrite. I saved, or at least provided the means for them to save themselves, saved Gil Young and Sangha, but I let a bunch of other people die that I probably could have saved. Again, I like all of that. It's making sort of Dokja and his story a little bit more complex. We get another 200 coin super chat, and Dokja says he's basically trying to get the constellation's attention. He wonders why Han was using the subway, because he knows he has a car, he brags about it, he has wealth, and I love that I noted this down. I was like, maybe that's a mystery. Maybe we'll get into that in the future. Why was Han on the subway? And then I do the read-through before this, and there is actually an explanation. So again, I love that little details like that I noted, and it's like, oh, that was actually important. We did get an explanation for that. So we end with sort of saying that they can now be sponsored by constellations. We have some monsters or creatures name dropped, like the ground rat or the krook. And that's basically where we end episode 7. Before we get into episode 8, we learn about Dokja's sponsor options. He has 4 options, and I'm going to go a teeny bit out of order for this chapter because as I go through his 4 options, I want to discuss the things he said about them, and then we'll get to some of the other info. But yeah, the first of his options, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, leads a group called Black Cloud. And their true name is long. We don't get to know what the true name is. They boost their incarnation's power, but the incarnation loses their minds as they use that power. And Abyssal Black Flame Dragon usually supports edgelord type characters. The demonic judge of fire, who is Archangel Uriel. Somebody in the novel chose her, so Dokja already has a bit of information there. But Archangel Uriel is an absolute good sponsor, and absolute good sponsors are powerful, but they place restrictions, morally, of course, on their on what their incarnation can and can't do. So again, probably not a good choice for Dokja because it would restrict the things that he might want to do to be able to survive the apocalypse. So then we get to the secretive plotter, which is just going to be the most important, because the secretive plotter, Dokja says, I don't remember them. They must be one that was just mentioned in the novel, but not really shown off. And he dismisses it as not sounding powerful. So to me, these other 3, we get these big, long, just paragraph explanations. Secretive plotter, he's like, oh, they don't sound very powerful. We don't get a long explanation. I'm like, okay, so they're going to be the important one then. Lastly, the 4th option he gets is the Prisoner of the Golden Headband, Sun Wukong. Character, there was at least a character sponsored by him in the novel. He's extremely powerful, and the author, Dokja says, the author emphasized how strong he was, and I have just seen, I feel like in video games, anime, manga stuff, I've just seen so many Sun Wukong references that at this point I'm just like, boring. I have just seen it so much. I'm like, it's overdone for me. So I'm like, no thanks, don't pick that one, please. So Sangha is offered 2 sponsorships. The constellations never reveal their true names. The main character, Dokja says, had 5 options at the beginning, so 4 is pretty good. We finally have the introductions to each other from the 5 survivors. They're finally introducing themselves. Hyunsung says that he's read stuff like this online before, so he kind of gets the general genre that they're living in right now. He sort of gets it. He also says that he wants to check on his unit, but the thing that Dokja is trying to implore to everyone, or trying to convince everyone to do, is leave the car, because he's like, we need to get out of here before the main character gets here, and that's just his sort of general plan, and the thing that he's trying to convince them to do, despite all the monsters outside and stuff, is let's leave right now. But that is where we would end episode 8, so let's just move on into episode 9. Episode 9, we start out learning about Hyunsung's character profile, that Lee Hyunsung is 28 years old, his constellation is the Master of Steel, and in my reactions and everything, I feel like I was caught up on this idea of it being like a god of the forge, because so many cultures have those. Like, gosh, I guess you would have like Hephaestus, Vulcan, they're kind of the same. I mentioned the one whose name, Ogun, I believe. So I think that's from Yoruba culture. So again, something like that. But then again, like Master of Steel, it could just be like a legend or a hero or a god or something that's famous for using weapons. So it's a really wider net than what I was casting. I guess it could also be something like, I think Masamune was like a real person, but also like in Japanese culture is more of like sort of, it's one of those things where throughout history the sort of real people, but they're also kind of legendary, and the like more fiction sprouts up around them. So could be, maybe. So lots of options there, lots of options there. His attribute is soldier who turned a blind eye to injustice. So there's a whole backstory there that we're not getting yet. Lots to unpack there in the future. His skills, he has bayonet level 2, camouflage level 2, patience level 2. Those all sound interesting. So I can't wait to learn what those are. Stigma, which I believe is what each person gets from their supporting constellation. His stigma is Great Mountain Push. It's at level 1, which makes sense because he would have just selected a constellation. And his stats, his SAM, is Stamina 8, Strength 8, Agility 7, and Mana 5, which Dokja runs through. He's like, this is all the same as in the novel. So he's like, okay, nothing's changed. Lee Hyun-sung got the stats he had in the novel or whatever. And their next sort of scenario or sub-scenario is that they have to cross this collapsing bridge and make it to the station. Then we have the ichthyosaur, which Dokja's like, is this an ichthyosaur? No, it's pretty large. It might be a sea serpent, a sea commander. So we have different ranks of them. Is coming to destroy the bridge. And then also at the end, we have some zombies rising up also. But yeah, that would end episode 9, then we get into episode 10. In episode 10, the ichthyosaur takes down the bridge before Dokja, Han, or Sang-ah can make it across, but Gil-young and Hyun-sung make it to the station. And I think once you make it into the station, you can no longer see outside of it. There's again one of those barriers blocking you. So once they make it across, you can no longer tell what's going on out there. At least I believe that's the way it goes, maybe even from the beginning of this scenario. Or I don't know if it gets that way later, but at some point it ends up that way. Then Dokja's like, oh wow, I survived, the bridge is destroyed. I didn't think those two would make it. He just assumed that Han and Sang-ah would die in this whole thing. And then a Deus Ex Machina, the bridge of even numbers, activates. And we learned that a Deus Ex Machina is something that can happen triggered by a constellation at a great cost to the constellation. So like ultra mega super chat from the constellation creates a Deus Ex Machina. It's a rare event that, again, was even rare in the novels according to Dokja, and this was likely caused by Sang-ah's supporting constellation. He tries to view her profile but can't, so he makes the assumption that she must have some sort of skill or ability or attribute that's blocking him from reading her character profile. We have the zombie Namun. Zombies are apparently tier 9 humanoid demons. And we learned that Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint, the skill, doesn't work on things without a consciousness. It has to actually be thinking something for Dokja to be able to read what it's thinking. Then we have Han just runs away across the bridge, because you have to have 2 people crossing at a time, hence the name, Bridge of Even Numbers. He runs away with Sang-ah, and Dokja recognizes what he does as the stigma one-legged swift foot, and it is the stigma that you get from the constellation Limping Trickster, so we learn what his constellation is there. And also, because he uses that, and Dokja's like, oh, I can see what constellation he has, he tries to read Han Myunggo's character profile as well and can't, and that's when he realizes it's not because Sang-ah has some sort of it's not because she has some sort of skill blocking him. It's because he can't read Sang-ah or Han's profiles because they weren't characters in ORV. They were dead at the beginning. They weren't even characters. That's why he can't read their stuff. So again, that makes it interesting. It makes it really meta because this is real life. But if people who weren't in the story can't have their character profile read or his abilities don't work on them, then again, the more he changes the story, the more his powers maybe won't work. So again, just adds a bunch of like weird restrictions on the author that they're gonna have to, again, like fight their best to write around the best they can. So there are 15 minutes left. We have I love Byung so much. We have more funny Byung moments. And we learn about Dokja's skill Bookmark. He has 3 slots. The first slot is filled with Delusional Demon Namun Kim, Understanding 25, the second Steel Blade Hyunsung Lee, Understanding 35, and his third slot is an empty slot. So he activates Namun's abilities and he gains his skills for 1 minute. And I'm assuming because it says it's low because his understanding is low. So I'm assuming the higher his understanding goes, the more, well, the longer he can use his skills perhaps. And that's going to really help if he can just copy Hyunsung's abilities, you know. But as he uses it, as he defeats Zombie Namun, I don't know if it's because he defeats Zombie Namun or if it's because he uses his powers, but his understanding increases. I think it would be really cool and interesting if it's as he uses the powers. So the more he uses somebody's powers, the better he gets at using them. I do think that would be interesting. And then finally at the end, the real main character finally bursts out, and that takes us into episode 11. So in episode 11, we are introduced to Yoo Jun-hyuk, who I think is the real edgelord. Like his outfit, the fact that he's carrying a sword. I'm like, why is he carrying a sword? So was he just like, did he like earn and spend coins right away maybe? Or was he just walking around in the subway with a trench coat and sword? Just the absolute edgelord. The absolute edgelord. And I guess it could make sense because everyone on the subway is like, why on earth is this guy dressed like that? But little do they know, he knows it's because the apocalypse is coming. He's prepared because he's a regressor. So, yeah, real edgelord. We get to see his a little bit of his character profile. He has the attributes regressor, third round, so this is his third time back through, which is mythical. And all the ones we've seen up to now have been generic, so that one's a mythical, and he has Pro Gamer, which is rare. Also, it's interesting that he has 2 attributes. I usually wouldn't think that a character would have more than one, but I guess we're seeing that it is possible here, or it might only be possible because he's a regressor, and regressor is just added on top of what he already has. And that might be true for other ones we get introduced to in the future. Maybe you have one, but there are also others that can kind of be like a secondary attribute. So his skills are Eye of the Sage level 8, Close Combat level 8, Weapons Proficiency level 8, Mental Barrier level 5, Crowd Control level 5, Reasoning level 5, and Lie Detection, but we don't get to see the level because it is obscured. So yeah, we have Dokja going, this is my first method of surviving the apocalypse. I'm assuming that means teaming with Yoo Jun-hyuk. We have this cool panel where it's like Yoo Jun-hyuk, the regressor, all that. And he says, or he mentions that he's going to kickstart a tragedy. So we have no clue what that all means yet. Yoo Jun-hyuk interrogates Dokja and basically learns, he like hits him and he's like, okay, you tanked that, so that means you already know how to use coins, and he's basically just learning more about him. Dokja thinks that he's lost his humanity after regressing 3 times. Kind of makes sense. You make it through the survival game twice before as far as you can, and by the time you're going through it your third time, by the time you're on your third run, he's basically like doing a roguelike. He's lost his sort of humanity. And Dokja lies about knowing him, saying, oh yeah, I work at a video game company, of course I know you. But he's like, nah, he was just a fictional character to me until now, which I think is interesting. So it's almost like Dokja's being thrown into the world of this story, because it's like, so if he was a real person before all this, then it's like, I guess he wasn't that famous. How did Dokja not know of him? How did he not know, wow, this guy who's the main character of this story is like also somebody who's like also a programmer in real life? I mean, how did he not put that together? I don't know. I have no clue how this works because like it's a story or whatever. So Yoo Jun-hyuk is asking Dokja, you know, how did you survive the subway? The only people that were supposed to survive there were Hyunsung and Namwoon, which makes, again, was Dokja not there the past 2 times that he went through? Did Dokja just die and not succeed the last 2 times he went through? Dokja realizes, or he's told by sort of his data boxes, that he already has a high understanding of Yoo Jun-hyuk. So Dokja can actually read his mind. He's suspicious because, again, only Namun and Hyun-sung should have survived. So again, this guy being different from his past runs is really, really sketchy. He's kind of shocked that the future is changing. He wonders if it's because, hey, this run I just went ahead and blew up everybody in the car that I was in to pass the scenario. He wonders if because he did that way, could that have led to the future changing? But either way, he thinks that Dokja is dangerous, of course. So he uses Eye of the Sage, which lets you see not only the attributes window, but also hidden information about the person, and it's the highest grade detection skill. Dokja thinks, okay, this is good. This is a good way to learn my own abilities, because remember, Dokja can't look at his own skills and attributes and abilities and stuff. So he's like, okay, he'll just use Eye of the Sage to see all my info, and then I'll read his mind, and I'll be able to see all of my info, or know all of my info. But the new skill, Fourth Wall, activates, blocking it. And that's where we end Chapter 11. Moving into Chapter 12, Yoo Jun-hyuk thinks that, okay, I need to kill this guy. But Dokja brings up Scenario 46, kind of, sort of, I don't want to say fooling him into thinking that he can see the future, but basically saying, I know futures you don't know. I know about Scenario 46. You need help to pass it. And Yoo Jun-hyuk's like, okay, he has information about the future, but I don't think he's a regressor. He's like, if he was a regressor, I would have known about it. So he uses his lie detection skill, which confirms that Dokja knows more about the future than he does. So he's like, okay, this is surprising. Is this a prophet other than Anna Croft? So we have Anna Croft, name drop there. We get the explanation that a prophet can see the future and passively block detection skills. And also Dokja says that there was only one prophet in the story of TWSA, so assuming that's probably Anna Croft then. And of course, as you would think, the way that regressors work, eventually as they're making their runs, regressors will eventually reach a future that they don't know about yet. So of course, somebody who can see the future that they don't know about yet is super, super, super valuable. Also mentioned by Yoo Jun-hyuk's thoughts is not only Scenario 46, which, like Dokja's abilities will be helpful with, but also fighting the Zarathustra. So that's mentioned. That's something that, again, is bound to be extremely important in the future, but it's something that's mentioned here. The others, then, again, we see they can't see what's going on outside of the station. As they're crossing the bridge, ORV deactivates from fatigue, so he can no longer read his mind, but Dokja's like, I know him well enough to answer his questions anyway because I've read the story. Yoo Jun-hyuk drops Dokja from the ledge to end this section after they sort of have this conversation where Dokja's like, okay, we're partners, but you need to treat me like an equal. And he's like, if you can see the future, am I going to drop you? He's like, of course you're going to drop me. Go ahead and do it. I know that this, I'm assuming why he did it is he's like, hey, if if he's worthy of working with me, he'll survive. He'll be strong enough. He'll be good enough. I'm thinking that's why he did it. But if I think about things logically, it's like, I know this is like more exciting for the story. It moves the narrative ahead. But logically, it would seem very stupid of Yoo Jun-hyuk to waste this opportunity to potentially lose somebody who can see the future. It would seem much more logical for him to just try to drag Dokja along as somebody to be like, okay, see the future for me. Yeah, it seems like it'd be very careless and dumb of him to waste the opportunity that he didn't get his first two runs to work with Dokja here and to just put him in danger like that. But again, I guess even if it doesn't make sense logically, it moves the plot ahead. And also, I'm assuming the reason he did it is basically to be like, okay, prove yourself. If you're strong enough, you'll meet back up with me. Which again, I just feel like it's careless and reckless, but hey, maybe we'll learn more in the future. But yeah, that would bring us to the end of the main character section. I really like the next section coming up too. This one was really, really good. I think it was pretty info heavy. We just learn a lot. I guess I said that about the first section too. But yeah, that's kind of just what I felt here. It was really good. It was really fun to read and to go back through and take notes on and everything. But it is just sort of very info heavy, very info dumpy. Yeah, I guess that's it. There's not really much more to talk about. Can't wait to do the next review though. I really did like the next section, so I think talking about that's going to be really fun. But yeah, I'll end things here. Thank you so much for watching. Like if you did like the video, comment down there to tell me what you thought of these chapters, my thoughts on them and everything. Again, please don't be spoilery. If at all possible, please don't be spoilery. But yeah, comment down here. We can talk here. If you want to talk on Twitter, follow there. If you want to talk on Discord, just ask and I can give you the link. I'm always open to talk to you all. Again, just don't spoil me, please. And if you'd like to help support the channel to help me to continue to make videos, you can do so by supporting on patreon.com/HakuOfTheTubes or by just becoming a channel member here, hitting join. Thank you to people who are already patrons and channel members. Thank you so much to the chosen regulars, Etchy Zero, Evan Holly, and Remorsefuls, Magical Girl, FR Nono, Cherryton Students, also the Storyteller, and David Langstaff, and Slayer Candidate SG. Huge thank you to all of you. Huge thank you to all of you just for watching, and yeah, I'll see you all next time.